Hello, welcome to another episode. We are here today with someone who reached out to us on our website, who's been listening, and we love that. We love when that happens, when we meet people through the website just from listening and want to tell their stories. We want to hear every adoptee's story. So I'd like to introduce Lenore Hiller today. Hi, Lenore.
Hi, Lenore.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you. I want to just say thank you so much for this opportunity. I was telling Louise before this started that I don't talk a lot about my adoption story. People close to me know my story just because it's hard to explain what it's like to be adopted.
It is, I agree.
So I was adopted from Caserta, Italy, which is in southern Italy, in 1967, September 8th, 1967.
We're all Virgos.
Yay.
But I was actually born in January of 1966.
Oh, so we take that back.
Yeah.
Never mind.
So I was 20 months old when I came to the United States. So I didn't really know. I think I knew I was adopted for most of my life. I think my parents told me when I was young. I did know that I was from another country. I think I knew that first. Because
what were the circumstances of your adoption, and where were you for those 20 months?
I was with my mother, then in a hospital, and then I was in an orphanage.
So you were with her for
about 5 months. Yeah. So what happened was, I think my brother, actually, I have an older brother. He's 5.5 years older, and he's my parents' biological child. So I know that when I came from Italy, they were like taking me around to meet all my cousins. And I knew that I came with my ears pierced and I had little gold hoops. And I know that I spoke Italian. I was 20 months old. So as much as a 20-month-old can speak. So that was kind of unique. And I remember I was adopted into a town full of Italian immigrants. But I remember, even as a little child, feeling like something's wrong here. Like I'm either the wrong kind of Italian or they are. Like I'm not the same as these people. But I couldn't put my finger on it.
Where were you? Where did you go to?
I went to New Kensington, Pennsylvania, which is full of Italian immigrants, right? So, you think, oh, you're just going to fit right in. And I remember
fish out of water, even in the Italian community.
My brother was getting his hair cut and the barber was Italian, and he wouldn't give me a lollipop unless I would answer him in Italian. And at that point, I don't think I spoke Italian anymore. Maybe I was 4 or 5. And I was so embarrassed because I was afraid to speak Italian because I thought, if I get this wrong, he's not going to give me that lollipop, and I want that lollipop. I mean, it was just such a weird thing. Like, it was just a weird feeling. So one day I was standing outside and I remember it being like autumn because I can remember the angle of the sun being in the fall. And some neighborhood boys walked by and my brother said, "Hey, come over here. I have to tell you something." He said, "This is my sister's adopted." And I was like, I am. And they said, "No, she's not." And he said, "Yes, she is." And they said, "Okay, then where are her parents? Where are her other parents?" And he said, "They died in a car accident." And I went, "Oh, they did?" I mean, I said, "We have to tell Mom because she's going to want to know this." So I remember.
How old were you then?
5.5 then. I went running into the house with my brother to tell my mom that my parents had died in a car accident. And she was so mad at my brother because I think maybe that's, she probably didn't want him talking about it, and she said, "That's not true. You lied. You made up a story." And I felt so bad for my brother, right? She's like, "Well,
Just having a brother 5 years older, it's same thing, 5.5 years older, and he was not adopted. We had so many weird little things like this because they're trying to figure out their story too with this. So they just, yeah.
So he thought that that would be a good answer, that he had to have an answer.
So you did not know you were adopted at that point?
I think I didn't understand what it meant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then I said, that's when I said, well, what happened to my mom? Well, what happened to her? And my mom said, she was very poor and she couldn't keep you. So to me, that started kind of my lifelong fear of poor, right? Poor means you'll be sent away if you're poor. So I kind of always had this feeling of having to take care of myself, if that makes any sense, like just a fear of being returned all the time. So I guess I can talk about my story, but like all of the manifestations now that I know of my behavior growing up was all due to that.
Isn't that amazing how later in life
You can look back and see.
Yes. And your life just kind of, everything makes sense when you have that moment of realization.
So, I mean, I had terrible separation anxiety, didn't know what that was. And I was very hypervigilant too. My brother said that if my parents, they used to go out to dinner and I would just cry and cry and cry. And he said he would sit on the floor and pray to God that I would just stop crying. I was just so afraid and hypervigilant. And some of that manifested in me feeling like just very unsafe and very unsafe in my body. Like I was always afraid that I was sick or dying, right? That I had something wrong with me and I couldn't figure it out and I had to take care of myself. So I think when I was like about, I want to say 4.5, 5, my parents went to Spain for a few weeks. And when my mom came back, my mom had terrible pneumonia. And this was back like in 1970. The doctor actually came to the house then because they knew the doctor and he came to the house and my mom was very sick and I wasn't allowed in the room. I was begging to go in the room and just let me lie on the bed with her. And they were like, no, she's very sick and you can't go in. And that's when I remember, this is funny now, I started reading the Dr. Spock Baby and Childcare book because I thought I was dying. So I kept reading like how to take care of myself, like trying to figure out at that age, like what thermometer to get and like what to do so I wouldn't be sick. I mean, it's crazy now when you think about it. So
not so crazy. I think it's a lot of trauma and all of that.
It's just being able to connect the dots now is so mind blowing. Quick question. Was this your birth name, Lenore?
No.
So they changed your name at 20 months?
Right. Okay. So
that had to be weird.
That was weird. So now the story goes on. So, I'm trying to figure out who I am in this family. And I kept trying to like make sure that they loved me. I would always ask them if they would love me. And I made this really funny. I made a little chart, Mom, Dad, Joe, do you love me? Yes or no? And they would have to check it off. And my brother checked no, right? Funny. And my mom was like, no. And she scratched that out. Like, yes, right. Okay.
Gotta love Joe. I think Joe might have to meet my brother.
Yeah. But I just loved my brother and I wanted to be him, really, because I could just see how he moved in the world versus how I moved in the world. Like I was very fearful and hypervigilant and to the point
he knew his place.
Yeah. He was just like,
he had genetic mirroring and
yes. And I have this big family, all these cousins on both sides. And they would probably be shocked to hear me talk about this, right?
Yeah.
Like,
were they also Italian? I mean, I know they weren't the same kind of
Italian, right? Okay. But again, like I could never embrace that side of me. I just never could do it. It's just really, it bothers me that I can't do that. So when I was 12, my father got very sick and he passed away. And it was devastating because he was a lawyer and he was about to become a federal judge.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
we had that whole spring, he was going through being vetted by the FBI. The president of the United States had to appoint him. And then he got sick. Well, he had been sick when my brother was just 3. He had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but he overcame that. What happened was, this is such a long story. The drugs that they gave him at the time, just a steroid to suppress his immune system, they didn't know back then that you can't suppress someone's immune system that many years. So he got a rare virus. If you ever see those commercials for MS drugs, when they talk about a rare virus, PML, well, that's what he got.
Yeah.
So we didn't tell anybody he was sick because my mom said he could get better and we don't want to ruin anything for him to get this appointment to become a federal judge. I mean, here's this, his parents were immigrant. Here's this person from this small town with immigrant parents and look what he's made of himself, right? But he passed away. But, now this was a time when we really didn't talk about anything. So he passed away and we never really talked about it because it was just so painful. So my father dies in May. My brother goes off to college 6 hours away in September. My next door neighbor and best friend's family is transferred to Australia.
Oh.
And I go to middle school, from this little tiny school to this big middle school. And I don't even know how I got through school. I spent literally most of the day just staring out the window, honest to God. So I feel like everything that people learned in school, I didn't learn because I wasn't there. I always say to my husband, like, I can't diagram a sentence.
Oh, I'm with you on that.
In history, because my dad was sick when I was finishing 6th grade. He was sick at the end. I just would stare out the window.
So I had the same thing. I just have to tell you, because I was going through trauma at that period of time too. And same thing. I don't know anything.
I just was like, I wasn't there that day. I always say,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't there that day for a whole year. But yeah, that was just a really dark period in my life. I would say I probably had a lot of depression, but I didn't know that's what it was until, now this is going to sound weird, until high school. Well, and then I discovered, when I was 12, I discovered my name. So after my father died that summer, we were going through all of his papers. And I must have opened, my mom must have had the file cabinet open, and there it was. There was a file that just said adoption on it. So I got up real early one morning and I opened the file and I just pulled that out. And I was kneeling on the floor looking through it, and there was my name. So I wrote it on a piece of paper, and my name was Josephina. And I wrote it down that's what my name was. And I look up, there's my brother standing there. I thought I was having a heart attack. You weren't supposed to talk about this. Like, it wasn't like you're adopted, don't talk about it. It was just like this unspoken, you just don't talk about this. You're here, we love you, move on.
Yeah.
Right. So my brother took the paper and he said, I'm your brother, they're your parents. And he tore it in the paper almost in half, and then he handed it back to me. So then I just put it back in the file and closed it and then put it back, and I just never looked at it again, and then just moved on from that.
I find it interesting. My brother has a lot of defensiveness about being my brother, and I wanted to be like him. And very much followed him and was in awe of him. He was like the golden child type thing.
Right, for
And I
sure.
was always messing up and the little, but it's interesting how he had that same.
No, yes, but my brother he's so handsome and just really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just very, always follow the rules. The very good adoptee, would never do anything, never talk back. But if I would, it would be like, I told my husband a few times I unleashed a rage on my mom. Like it shocked me. It's like, where did that come from? Just out of nowhere, like 0 to 10 in 60 seconds type of rage that I unleashed. And, now that I know about trauma, it's like I must have had felt like I was put in a traumatic state.
Yeah. And suppression. I mean, trauma and suppression.
Right. I just suppressed my thoughts, any feelings I had. And then occasionally I just explode. And, I've probably exploded on some friends too. And I'm super embarrassed about it and can remember all the times I've done that. And just like, oh my God. Like
Me too.
Me too, actually.
This is my apology tour. But it's
men.
Because you didn't know. Like you didn't.
I like how you called it your apology tour. I feel like this whole podcast is our apology tour.
I go off to college. I studied music. That's what saved me because, remember my best friend in Australia, they come back. They're transferred back to Pennsylvania, back into their home next door. I lost it. I was used to people leaving. I couldn't take people coming back. This is going to sound crazy, but I was suicidal. I mean, I couldn't have her back because I had already that's over now. Like, let's move on. That's over. And I just had this awful feeling, and I would pray a lot at night and cry a lot. I couldn't figure out. And I finally told my mom, I need some help. Something's wrong. So she talked to our neighbor who was a doctor, and he said, there's this psychiatrist. So I started seeing a psychiatrist, right? 1982, I think I was 16. And he asked me to tell him about myself, and I mentioned that I was adopted. And I asked, do you think that has anything to do with this? And he said, did you go to a good home? And I said, I did. He said, well, then no.
Oh, God.
It's of no value. So I said, okay.
It's of no value.
So this is really funny. So after a while, I guess this was a psychiatry this was traditional psychiatry, like analysis. Well, I didn't know. I'm 16, right? He said I would have to start coming 3 days a week. And my mom's like, no, you're not going 3 days a week. Like, we're not doing this. You're already taking voice lessons. He said I could decide whether I wanted to do that or voice lessons. Well, what would you choose, right?
Voice lessons.
So much. So I just threw myself into that. I just told the psychiatrist I can't come anymore. And I said, why can't I just come once a week? But because analysis doesn't work that way. And I was like, well, my mom's never going to go for that. So thank you for your time.
He lost me at no, it's of no value.
That's right.
Yeah. So I was just like, okay.
He should revisit his entire career after that.
Where he was and his name, or I can't remember any of that. So I threw myself into music. I auditioned, got into music school, did that. That's where I met my husband, who I call Saint David now. Because I put him through a lot. Just a lot of testing and like fear that he'll leave or fear that he's going to die. Fear that I'll be alone without him. I call him my world translator because sometimes I say I don't live in the world. I live in like the periphery, but you live in the world. So tell me what this is in the world. Like, is this normal? Like, I'm always kind of trying to translate And I feel like he does that. He helps me with that. So, I got through music school, but then I only taught music for a little while. I was a music teacher. But again, I would see how my husband faced the world versus how I faced the world. We both studied music. He was so confident, and I was so fearful of, what if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not this? What if I'm not that? And people judging me.
Yeah.
I just had such a fragile ego. But it's like the only way in a performance type of career is to put yourself out there. Well, I'm hiding my whole life, right? I can't do that. I just couldn't do that. So I went to school, then I got a master's in counseling because I love stories and people. I love to hear people tell their truth.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I discovered I wanted to go into counseling, is like, if people would just be allowed to talk, what if I could get paid to listen to people talk and they could tell me anything they wanted to say and I wouldn't judge them? So, while I was in the counseling program, this was 1990, like the spring of 90s when I started the counseling program. And I was married in the summer of 1990. So while I was in the program, again, this was back in the early 90s, nothing about adoption, loss, trauma, nothing like was ever covered in the program.
And that's not that long ago,
Do you think? Yeah. But I think they knew. I mean, they know about separation. I know they know about separation before 1990.
Of course. I just wonder where they kind of, is it all connected? This adoption industry, and I don't know.
So, I mean, I never thought that it had anything to do with that either, right? So while I was in the program, one of the women who was in a PhD program needed people to counsel. So I said, well, I'll be one of your subjects, right? And she kept telling me, like, as she was counseling, it seems like you're looking for like a mother. You're looking for like a mother figure. And I was like, that's terrible, because I have a mother, right? My mother was a lovely person, but a strong force, larger than life. She was the oldest of 5 and always take charge, right? And I'm sort of very passive. I just did whatever she said. I just really did, because I didn't want any trouble,
Yeah.
You didn't want to be sent back.
No, right. It's just like, do whatever you have to do. This is, oh my gosh, am I telling too many side stories here?
No,
Not at all.
She used to bowl. She was a bowler. She was into golf. She was much more physically active than I was. Even like I used to run, but she would bowl on Monday nights at midnight. I was so afraid. I was home alone. I was terrified to be home alone. And I would write her these little notes every Monday night. So if you heard about trauma, if you heard about the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, I would fawn. Those little notes were all me fawning over her, like, I love you so much. I'll see you in the morning. I hope you had a great night. And I would leave those every Monday night on her bed table. I think because I was afraid she was going to like disappear.
Yeah.
And
I was a big note writer. You're saying this, I'm like, oh my God, I wrote so many little notes.
So many little notes.
Yes.
So I'm in this program, and they had this workshop called the Human Dynamics Workshop. And it was a week-long workshop in the master's program. It was 6 days, 12 hours a day of like group therapy techniques. Right? It was 3 credits. So I'm like, awesome, I can get 3 credits in 1 week. I'm going to do it. So we're in this workshop. It's where I went to undergraduate school. So we lived on the campus. They put me in my husband's old dorm room, right? So I'm in my husband's old dorm room, and I'm like, this is wild. So it was our second anniversary. And the day in one of the workshops, people were just bringing up things that they were thinking. And I said that today's my second anniversary. And I'm thinking about the day I got married, how disconnected I felt with everybody. Like, it was a beautiful day. And I love my husband. I love the wedding. It was beautiful. But like, I felt like my cousins were all much more connected than I was. And I said, could it be because I'm adopted? And the woman facilitating said, same thing. Did you go to a good home? Yes, then it has nothing to do with that. Everything's fine. You just need to get past that. And I was like, all right. So there's the second time in 10 years.
And you're asking the questions. Most people don't even ask. You've asked twice, professionals.
So I'm like, all right, Lenore, you got a problem. So I finished my degree. I graduate. I'm in my first job. I'm a temporary counselor at a community college. I'm there maybe 8 months. One of my first students that I did a lot of academic counseling. This was a counseling type of session. She starts telling me that she's adopted and she wants to meet her birth mother. Should she meet her birth mother? And I said, well, do you know where she is? And she said, yeah, she's about a mile from my house. I just remember thinking, leave now, get in your car and go over there. Like, I couldn't imagine. So that started something in me. I was 28 and I thought, here I am with this girl and my issues started coming up and I just really wanted her to leave, right? I didn't want to, I'm like, I can't, all I kept thinking was, I can't help you. I can't help you. That's all I kept thinking. Well, really desperately wanted to hear her story because, again, never felt like I met an adoptee. Oh my God, what do adoptees think? Like, I want to hear what another adoptee thinks or feels, right? All right. So that was really interesting. So one day I said, let's see if there's some kind of like support group or something. So we had this book in our little resource library called The Where to Turn. So I opened it and there was on page whatever, the Pittsburgh Adoption Connection. I didn't know that. So I photocopied it. I gave her, I said, here, why don't you call them? So she left and I waited for my other coworkers to leave. And I popped my head out of the office and looked around. No one was there. I called the Pittsburgh Adoption Connection. And this woman on the other end was a birth mother, never met a birth mother, right? And didn't even know that was the title, that was like something that they were referred to. So she's telling me she goes into this tirade about she lost her daughter. Her daughter went to this home. The only thing she specified, this would have been during the baby scoop era. The only thing that she specified was that her daughter go to a Christian home. Well, they sent her daughter to Christian Scientists.
Oh, boy.
So her daughter had a high fever and they just prayed over her. So she had like brain damage, right? She's telling me all this on the phone and I'm just like, what is going on? Like, this can't be real. This can't be true. I remember thinking like they would never do that, right? They would never do that. Okay. So she said, we're having this huge workshop on Saturday. I'm so glad you called. You should come. So I went to the workshop. While I'm in the workshop, it splits off into a private detective. And he's telling people how to start searching. This is 1994. So I raised my hand. I said, how would I even begin to search? I wasn't born in this country. And he said, did you come through an agency? And I said, well, I came through Catholic Charities. A woman in front of me turns around and says, I'm a social worker from Catholic Charities. Why don't you should call me. And I said, call you and like, say what, right? Like, I don't know. So I called her and she said I could get non-identifying information. So I did. I sent for my non-identifying information. And that's where I received that. And I was able to see my name was my name and my birth mother, what she looked like. And I had 5 older siblings. I almost fell over. I couldn't believe it.
They had a picture of your mom.
No picture, just what she looked like.
What she looked like. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how old she was, 32. And I have to say this, and I didn't say this at the beginning, I never thought about her. I never allowed myself to think about her.
Mm-hmm.
Never. I know it's hard to believe that probably, but
no, it's not hard to believe.
I allowed myself to think about her. I just would, anytime I would try to think about her, I would just push it away because she's so far away. I'm never going to be able to find somebody that's 4,000 miles away. So get it out of your head and just move on was what I would do. So then I got that information and I went to my mom's house to tell her that you're not going to believe this. Like, I have 5 siblings, right? And she said, I knew that.
Oh.
What?
And I said, what? You knew that and you never told me? And she said, well, you never asked.
Oh my gosh.
Because it was this unspoken rule that
I only laugh because I think this is just the story of this.
Yes.
It's just,
right?
I would have never asked because it would have been breaking some kind of like code and I didn't want to like hurt her. Right.
Right.
So then I started to tell my brother, I told my brother that I was searching because I thought I better tell them I'm searching because I thought Catholic Charities was going to call them. That's how like fearful I was. Call them and report on me. So I wanted them to know. I didn't want them to receive a call. So we go to Catholic Charities a couple weeks later. My husband and I took a day off to go in. She said, you could come in and talk to me, this social worker, right? So I think this is great. She's going to give me all my info. This is perfect. So we get there and she says, this is a closed adoption and I can't tell you anything. I'm like, you're kidding me. Like, this is how much I didn't know. I thought I was just going to go in and she was just going to go, here's your file.
Yeah. Here's the name.
Yeah. Here's
Happy travels.
Yeah.
Right. So she said, I can't tell you anything. I said, I thought maybe you could just tell me her name. And she's like, no, but if you could guess her name, I'll confirm it. And I went, how am I going to guess somebody's name? Right? I mean, how could you guess somebody's name? So I looked at my husband, he looked at me and I was like, I guess I'll try. And she said, well, she has 2 names. I said, oh, is it something like Anna? I said, like, do you think it could be something like Anna Maria? And she said, that's her name.
What?
She said, how did you do that? And I said, I don't know.
You must have remembered from the time you spent with her.
Yeah.
Something deep down in there.
I couldn't believe, my husband looked at me and he was like, what just happened? And so we left.
And she probably broke a lot of protocols with that, I would think. That's
like confirming it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I left, and while I was at the conference, Nancy Verrier was presenting her book. It was brand new. It was The Primal Wound.
Wow.
And so I was sitting next to a birth mother, and her and I, we cried through the whole thing, right? Because she's talking about abandonment and loss, and a few of us got together with a different social worker, and they formed a support group. And so I started going to this support group every week. And then one night in the support group, she said, I have a name of somebody who I think he might be from Italy and adopted too. And I think he helps people if you want to give him a call. So I did. And he ended up being the person that is wrangling all of us. So I know this is such a long story, but his name is John, and he was also adopted from Italy. And his family is in California. So I called him in California and he said, you're not going to get anywhere with Catholic Charities, but what you could do is send for a Freedom of Information Act and send for your original file, and they're going to give you your file. And if your mother recognized you at birth, her name will be there. If her name's on there, Lenore, if she recognized you, I'll be able to find her anywhere if she's alive. So that gave me such confidence. So I filled out this form. I had to have my alien number and I just sent it and I waited, and it was a month and her name was on there. So there it was. So he said, she doesn't have a phone. So you're going to have to write a letter, which was what I did, which was kind of funny because it was like, hi, here I am. This is, my name is Lenore Hiller, but you knew me as Josephina. And I don't want to bother you, which is really funny, right? I don't want to disrupt your life. I'd like to get to know you. And then I put in a picture of myself. And then I just waited. And she wrote back in Italian. I had to get it translated. And then we set up a phone call, like a 3-way call. So California, Pittsburgh, Italy. About 2 months later, we were able to get a phone call together. And that's where
and he was translating. Is that okay?
So after he was adopted, they lived in the United States for a while. And then his whole family, they adopted 4 children from Italy. They went back and lived there for 10 years.
And kind of give their kids the Italian
right
side of them.
wanted that side. So there are 3,700 of us in the United States, and we're mostly in New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and California.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We're called the Italian diaspora. So that's a diaspora is a dispersion of any people from their original homeland.
Right.
So he started a group. There wasn't Facebook then. He started a group in 1989. It was like a Yahoo group or something, or AOL even. I wasn't in that then because I didn't meet him till 1994. So he's just been he looks at all the census records, and he was able to map out that there are 3,700 of us here. So since I've known him for 27 years, has just been trying to get all of us together. And so I was lucky her name was there, but if it's not, those people had to petition the court. And there are people in the groups, it's a Facebook group, they've petitioned the court years ago, years and years, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And you're petitioning the Italian. Oh yeah.
Trying to get your mother to give up her name, say who she is.
Yeah.
So
the laws around this are so draconian, and
it really is.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
so now you're on the phone call. I'm dying to know.
I know.
Like she just said she was in a very bad marriage and she had to leave him, and she just left all the kids.
Oof.
And he was really mad, and he came after her, and she met somebody else. And she was pregnant with me. Mm-hmm. So she met somebody else. She fled and went 7 hours away from him.
He was your father, or this other man was your father?
We don't know. So she fled. She knows, I'm sure. But she fled him, met this other man. And according to her, she intended to keep me. I did live with her. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, I didn't look like this new man. And so when people started saying, that's not your daughter, he was like, then she's got to go. So and then I got really sick. I was very sick. And so that's what I found in some of my records was I was with her till July. And then I had such terrible digestive issues. I was just so sick that she took me to the hospital, and then I ended up having sepsis. So I almost died. Like I was very sick. And then what I see is from July to October, she just kept taking me back and forth and back and forth. And what I think is he must have been making her life so difficult.
Yeah.
that she just was like, I'm out, like, I can't do this anymore. And I think, well, my records say at the very end there, a mother superior just came out and said to her one day, just leave her here and go, like, put her up for adoption. We can just get her through the National Catholic Welfare Conference. And there's like Catholic relief services. It's like she could be a refugee. We can classify her as a refugee to get her out of the country and get her adopted to America. So she signed the paper. And then her husband found her and they took her to court, and she was convicted of abandonment because she left her kids. So she went to jail.
Oh my gosh.
She went to jail while I was in the hospital. And then I went to the orphanage and he signed the paper. Her husband, her first husband. He signed for me to be relinquished too. And then I went to an orphanage. So I was in the hospital alone for like 5 months. And then I went to the orphanage on Christmas Eve. I mean, it sounds like I don't know, Oliver or something. I don't know.
It's so heartbreaking.
Yeah. So
And
I
she
was
was so controlled by these men.
right.
Yes, I was just going to say that.
And in an Italian society, it's
and
different.
the husband abuses her, but then she goes to jail.
Yeah, she gets
She flees for her life, and then she goes to jail.
Yeah. So, so then I went to this orphanage, and I was just surrounded by these nuns, and there were the orphanage. There were 20 girls there, and like on the bottom floor was a school, and like they did textiles there. They said, I saw that, and I was the youngest one there. I was 11 months old, so I lived in the quarters with the nuns, like with one young nun. I mean, and it makes me sad. I wish I would have thought of that years ago. Like, I wish I would have thought to look for her,
find her,
try to find her. But when you read my file, it's just so sad because you could tell the type of trauma I must have felt just being left in the hospital so many times. Like, her repeatedly leaving me must have been horrible, because they said that I would sleep at any noise and I would just jerk awake and cry, like that would happen repeatedly during the night.
I'm not surprised you had all that trauma in your childhood from all of this. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't have more, honestly.
It's weird. And I have my dress. Like, this is the dress that I came in, and I think I swear
my goodness.
made it. It has
my goodness.
It has this little like embroidery or something on it. And I wonder if they didn't make it.
Yeah. And the textile, right.
Because there's no tags in it anywhere. And there's nothing like that. So, then I'm Josephina one day, and then I get on a plane and I'm Lenore the next day. So.
Wow.
So then when you were on the phone with her, how was that?
And she said, she wrote back and said, I would have never been able to find you. And I thought that you were in New York, because he said, I'm sending her to New York and you will never see her again, is what she told me that he said. And then she said, well, are you going to come and see me? And so we did. We went that summer, which is a whole other story. And I did write my memoir, so it's all in my memoir of just the whole trip.
Oh, please make sure we'll put the name of your memoir in our show notes so people can get it.
It's not out yet.
Oh, okay.
It's in my laptop. But just getting there, just getting to Italy and not speaking the language. And she had 4 other children after me.
So she had a total of
9.
10.
Oh, 10.
She had
and you don't.
She had 5, then me, then 4 after me.
And you don't know for sure that those older ones are not your siblings. They could be.
They are my half siblings.
Yes, but you don't know if they're your full or not.
So it's just, now they have very strong feelings against her.
Oh, I wondered about that.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you about DNA tests and all that, but they're probably like not on board.
one brother did. And it just shows that he's a half brother, but it's confusing. So it was very hard to be there because it's this little tiny town in southern Italy. Nobody spoke English. There was no Google Translate. There's no Uber. I stayed with my half sister, and John, the man that helped me, the Italian adoptee, he said, don't stay with her, stay somewhere else. And I thought, well, why? First of all, we just didn't know what to do. I was 29, but I might as well have been 12, right? People are like, oh, prepare, get ready and prepare. Well, I didn't prepare. I just jumped right in to this. And I think now that it was just so overwhelming. Like when we got there and I just had to wait for her to come over. She didn't have a phone, right? So my sister couldn't even call her. So I was like, how is she going to know that I'm here? And she just showed up. And I didn't know what to do. We shook hands. Like I thought we would hug and it would be this Oprah moment. But I think she was very much on guard.
Well, she had a lot of trauma as well. I'm sure.
And all the kids and
giving up a baby and being in jail in one foul swoop.
And so there I am, and they're just talking this rapid fire Italian, and there's nothing to prepare you for that. And we took an Italian class, but no, not at all. And in the very first night we were there in Italy, my husband got up in the middle of the night to get some water, and he opened the refrigerator. We stayed in this little bedroom that had a refrigerator in it. And my sister had 3 children, and my little niece was like 5. And I was like, you have to, she's going to wake up. And my husband's standing there drinking a glass of water. And I said, I think that I have the wrong mother. I don't think, do you think that they made a mistake? Do you think that she's really my mother, or do you think this is wrong? He said, Lenore, it's her. It's like her name, your birthday, the town. I couldn't believe it. It was just.
You're still missing the connection, really.
Yeah. And, so it wasn't like this big, let's talk and tell me everything. She talked to her daughter a lot. Like you could see them having these heated conversations while I just sat there. And, but I spent an awful lot of time with my half sister, right? Because my birth mother, I would just have to sit in this house all day and wait for her to come. Because she was remarried to this man who essentially helped send me away also, right? Because he's the one that said she can't stay. So I guess he was very upset that I was there.
Yeah.
So she had to sneak out to see me.
All these years later, and he still couldn't.
He still was like that. And they kept telling me all week that I was going to see I have 2 younger sisters and 2 younger brothers. Well, they wouldn't let me meet my sister. They wouldn't let me meet her. And the last day she sent a letter and it said, I really want to meet you, but my husband doesn't want me to be involved in this controversy. So I can't see you. She put a little grape, like a grapevine in the letter, like a peace offering almost, to say, I wanted to meet you, but I can't because he won't allow it.
It's a very patriarchal society with Catholic. You have a lot going on there.
And then I
my goodness,
had children in 1998. And then 2001, 2 sons. And that was mind blowing, right? My first son, when I looked at him that night that he was born, I just looked at him and I thought, oh my God, who could give a baby away?
Right. Yeah.
And I remember he was a couple weeks old and I was changing his diaper and his right thigh I had a little brown mark on it. I thought, oh my God, like who melted chocolate on his thigh? And then I said to my husband, oh my God, he has the same birthmark I have on my right thigh.
Ah,
I was like,
genetics. Yeah.
he's mine. Like he's really someone I'm attached to in this world, like in my life. Like he's near me. I mean,
Yeah.
so yeah, I do say that I hold a lot of trauma in my body, but I want to say that after my kids were born, like I went back into the fog. My birth mother, like we continued to have letters back and forth, but it was so arduous a process because I would have to write the letter, mail it to someone. He would have to take time to translate it. It was an Italian professor at the college where I worked. Then he would mail it back to me. Then I would have it mailed to Italy. Then I would wait for her. And I remember, like, we really weren't getting anywhere because we just weren't getting really deeper into conversation. I was like, I just can't continue to do this. And then I asked her, did you ever think of me? Did you miss me? Did you think of me? And she said, Lenore, I had to pretend that you were dead. That's what I had to do to survive. So that really hurt, you know? And then I thought, I can't do this anymore because I have these little kids and I'm working full time. I can't have this mental energy, and this primal wound stuff is like for the birds. Like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I just stopped writing to her, and I feel really bad about that. But then in 2010, my nieces weren't little anymore. I don't know if you can follow this whole story. They reached out to me on Facebook. And it was just so good to see them because they were grown up.
The ones that you stayed with?
The ones that I stayed with. So that summer, I said, we went back in 2010. We went, this time I said, I want to see those siblings in the north, the older ones. And I reunited with them.
Oh, that is so great.
2 of the 5 I was able to see. And they actually reached out to me when I came back from Italy the first time in 1995. He said, I'm your brother, Tarcisio. Why didn't you see me when you were here? Well, I didn't know where he was. I had no way of knowing where they were. I didn't know how to find them. He found me. I sent a letter to an address to it. There was even a brother older than him. And he sat on the letter and then he gave it to my brother in like October. I was already gone the first time. So he wrote, and then he and I wrote, and then he filled in some of my birth mother's tales. And they do not like her, right? Because she left them in a terrible situation. They went to orphanages and then they came out. Some went in, some stayed, some aged out. That those 2 are together. And my sister said, I knew you were born because you were still listed in the town. I guess they have vital statistics. I was listed as living there, and she couldn't believe that I was there and nobody told her. Well, I wasn't there. They accidentally recorded me as being in her town, and she was like 8 years old when I was born. And she felt betrayed, like, here my little sister's born and nobody is even telling me where she is. So
now, their father's a piece of work, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Are you still, now are you, catch us up to date?
I see my brother on Facebook. He's not on there a lot, but he's just really very fun. And that was fun when we went back in 2010 and I took my children. They were 12 and my little son was 8, going to be 9 when we went. And just to see, like, we went there and just to see Italy, but we really didn't get to see a lot of it because we were there on business, right?
Right.
But even that, like, you're a member of that family, but you're not really. And I remember, so while I was in Italy, they were taking us to Liguria, to the beach, and it's called the Italian Riviera, and it's just so beautiful. And we were going down all these mountains, like through all this wine country, and my phone rings and it's John from Italy. He translated for me one day while we were there. And thank God, or else I wouldn't have gotten any more of the story without him. He said, "Are you doing okay?" And I said, "John, if I die today, I could go die in peace because I at least got to see them again."
That is so beautiful. What a story. I can't wait to read your book.
Me too.
It's,
I could listen to this all day. And
it's
there's so many intertwined factions of it. Yes.
It's, like my head is always in Italy. I'm wondering if other international adoptees are like that. Like a lot of the time, I'm thinking about Italy when I can go back. And if I know, I guess maybe it's my age. I think about like when I die, I tell my husband, like, I want to be laid out, and I want to be cremated, and I want some of my ashes to be put there too.
Well, it's your home, really,
And I just I wish I lived there part of the time. And
well, maybe you will.
I know point. That's why.
Yeah. I mean, who wouldn't want to live in Italy part of the time?
I want to embrace being Italian, but it's really hard because again, it's that same thing I thought when I was like 5, like either I'm the wrong type of Italian or the people here are like, it's that. And I remember when I became a citizen, I remember that day. I remember when I came home from being a citizen, I had my American flag. I was so happy and I was waving it around. And I asked my dad, I said, "Dad, am I American or Italian now?" And he said, "You're American now of Italian descent." I said, "Oh, okay, thank you." Because I remember thinking I have to give that up now because now I'm an American. I just remember that.
Like it's some choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I work with college students, and lots of the college students are, they come from immigrant families, but they all come together, right? I just love to hear their stories, but they come together with their family.
I love that you found this man, John, and the work he's doing.
Yes.
And
he sounds like a really
connecting all these people. And that's a community too.
It is. So it's called Italia Adoption, and it's on Facebook. So if anybody ever hears this and they're an Italian adopter.
Yes, that's a really great resource.
Yeah.
I bet somebody will actually.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. It was such a pleasure. I mean, just a beautiful story. You tell it so honestly and vulnerably.
Yes.
I just loved hearing it.
Thanks a lot.
Me too, Lenore. This has been wonderful.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.